Hi everyone, this is Karen again, and this is the second part of our research tutorial. In the first part, we focused on searching super search, and this part will make a little bit more sense if you've watched that part first. Again, we're starting from the research guide, and we're going to scroll past super search and go down to key databases for topics in literature. So we search super search, which searches a large portion of our library resources, and now we're going to do a more focused search. So you have access to over 300 databases at Wellesley College, and there are databases in every subject area, and some interdisciplinary databases as well that are a lot more focused than something like super search, which does cover multiple disciplines. So on the research guide, I've listed some of the key databases in literature specifically, and these are also related, literature and related fields, so things like film would be covered, linguistics, languages are covered in some of these as well. So when you're searching individual databases, it's actually a good idea to search multiple individual databases. There will be overlap. You'll see some of the same sources coming up for similar searches in different databases, but it's always worth trying in multiple databases because there's going to be unique content in each database. So especially if you're not finding what you need in one database. They also have different features, different strengths and weaknesses, so it can be easier to search some, or some can bring certain kinds of materials up to the top of your search results list. And they have different features that can allow you to focus your search. So we're going to use some of the same strategies in terms of searching as we did in super search, and just take a look at the differences in the results that come up. So just in general, why search an individual database if super search essentially covers almost everything? And of course, we saw this a little bit, that super search can be all over the place. It can be hard to focus a search sometimes. It's searching so much full text that it could be finding a phrase in the middle of a book, and the book may not actually be about science fiction or about human reproduction. So even though there's attempts at relevancy ranking, and you can use some of those search features to focus your search in super search, it sometimes can be hard to really refine a search. So when you choose an individual database, and especially a subject-specific database, you're automatically narrowing your focus to that subject area. So you're automatically going to have more relevant material in your search. So the other thing to remember is that super search doesn't actually cover everything that we have. So you will miss some key resources if you don't search some of the databases in your discipline. So we're going to focus on the database Literature Online. I do want to point out MLA Bibliography is also a very important database in literary studies and film studies as well. It can be a little bit more finicky to search, but certainly if you're going to continue in the area of literature, it's going to be a very important database. And I'm also really happy to walk you through it. It has some really nice features that can be very helpful. So, but we're going to look at Literature Online, and we're going to open up that database and try a search. We're going to start with a search similar to the one, or the same actually, as the one that we did in super search. So we did science fiction as a phrase, and we started with just the general term reproduction. And we got something like 25,000 results when we were in super search. And you can see here we have 1,300 results. So a lot more focused in terms of the amount of material that's covered. And you can also see, and we'll take a closer look at this in a minute, you'll see that the results are more focused on the area of literature. And even though you may find some things that are not as relevant, you won't have those really, those real outliers that you have generally in super search, that you can have in super search. You generally won't get those in individual databases. So, or in subject specific databases. So let's take a look. So we're focused on looking for secondary sources, so for literary criticism, scholarly articles, books, reviews, and so forth. And that's this first category. And so we're going to go into that in just a second. But I did want to point out that Lion also has these other categories. So it has primary text. So it could be a really interesting place to see if you can find some science fiction stories related to a topic of interest. And it also has reference works, and I'm going to show you very quickly. These come from various encyclopedias and companions and give overviews of some areas such as science fiction, or in this case, so this is an encyclopedia or a companion called Cambridge Companion to American Science Fiction, and there's an article in it on feminist and queer science fiction in America. And so this can be really helpful when you're starting out and you're trying to define your topic and you're interested in reproduction, let's say, but you want to kind of get the lay of the land and have a sense of what scholars are writing about this. An encyclopedia or handbook article can be a really great place to start. So you can see that it's divided into different subheadings, and here, for example, is a whole section on queering reproduction beyond male and female. So this could be a really interesting place to start thinking about some of the different ways you can approach the topic. And then always in anything that you look at, taking a look at the bibliography, the footnotes is a good idea, and reference sources can be really helpful for that because they, again, gather multiple perspectives. So that's just a little side note into reference works, but we're going to go back to the results, and then we're going to click through just to the criticism results, because we want to take a look at those sort of secondary sources, those argument sources that are bringing various arguments to bear on a topic of interest to you. So we can see if we, even in this broad search for just science fiction and reproduction, that we already have a pretty good set of relevant results. We can certainly focus this more, and we'll do that in just a minute. But again, we're not searching that huge body of multiple disciplines, and so we're getting a more focused set of results that are focused on science fiction in literature or film. So we can always take a look at the details as we did in Super Search as well, and that could help us by, again, giving us other subjects or phrases, terms that we might want to use in another search. So here we have human reproduction, paternity, for example, reproductive technologies is another possibility, parenthood, and so forth. So always take a look and gather those search terms so you can, again, try to either narrow or expand your search depending on what your search results look like. So again, what we did, we're going to do something similar. Again, we're going to build a set. We're going to do an open parentheses, and we're going to search for human reproduction, as we did in Super Search, or sexual reproduction. And again, that should be a problem because I did not close my my parentheses. So you can see that that can be a problem. We're going to go, sorry about that. We're going to go back to our search, and I'm going to type this in again, and I'm going to show you. So what I didn't do is put that parentheses at the end. So you have to have that whole set. So it's actually good to sort of see if you get an error like that, make sure you've got both parentheses there. So we've got science fiction and human reproduction or sexual reproduction. So we've focused on human reproduction, but we've also added another term, and now it's giving it to me, but I'm not sure why it took the parentheses out. So we're having a little kind of funky thing going on here, but that's okay. There we go. So now we've got a set of results that are a little bit more focused than just using the term reproduction, but I'm also giving it some alternative terms So human reproduction or sexual reproduction. And again, we could expand this a little bit more by using one of those terms we saw, reproductive technologies, for example, is another possibility. We could do paternity, and always using that or and then closing the parentheses. So here we go. We should get a few more results now, or maybe quite a few more if that term, that phrase is. So we went from 120 something to 170. So again, sort of helping, anything you can do to think about the different search terms that you might use to describe a topic will give you more possibilities. So again, if we now scroll through our results, we can see most of them are focused on literature. And now that we've given it some good search phrases, also seems more focused on this idea of human reproduction and sexual reproduction. So those are just a couple of ways you can search an individual database and get the advantages of searching something a little bit more focused. One thing I would also point out about this particular database is there's a nice way to focus a search just a little bit more by deciding whether you want your terms to appear anywhere as it is by default, or if you want them to appear in something like a subject heading, or this is a really nice sort of in-between choice. This is anywhere except full text. So this will search for your terms anywhere except for in the full text of the article. So it will search in the title, in the keywords that are associated with those subject terms that are associated with it, and also in things like the abstract. So a little bit of a summary of the article. So it's going to be a lot more relevant if your search term, for example, if you take the term science fiction and you search for it, and it has to appear in either the title or the abstract or those subjects. And then you can take your other terms. If you say, oh, well, these terms, I'd accept anything that had those terms anywhere in the article. I want an article that's really focused on science fiction, but I want that article to have some discussion of human reproduction or sexual reproduction. And that's actually really useful for terms like this, where you're not really sure exactly what the right term is. Having those appear anywhere in the full text can be a little bit, can be better than trying to force them to appear in the abstract, because maybe something slightly different will appear in the abstract. Whereas something like science fiction, that's a pretty standard term. And if you want it to be about science fiction, it's a good idea to have that appear somewhere that's highly relevant. And again, you can try alternative terms for science fiction. So you might be interested in speculative fiction or dystopian fiction. So you could add those again to the abstract. So if we do this, we should get a more focused search than the one we did when we searched for all of our terms anywhere. And so you can see it defaults back to giving us all of the different things, so criticism and primary text and so forth. So we can go back to criticism again, and here we've got, we'll have 63 results, so a lot more focused. Now we know these things are really absolutely about science fiction, in that's a substantial focus of those articles. And those other articles that were weeded out, they might be a little bit less so. Again, this can be, you know, it depends on how many results you get. You might not want to focus. You may want to sort of scan your results to start, because maybe something has a whole section on science fiction, but it isn't mentioned in the abstract. So again, you need to sort of play around with your search terms, be flexible, be persistent, and we'll talk more about this when I visit on Friday. I hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.